Start. I just wanted to say welcome to those who were here last week and also to people who are new this week. Scott gave us a great intro last week, and I thought it was kind of appropriate that we had homework because it's an indication that what we're doing takes some work. I know a lot of times, myself included, I like to show up at a forum and be inspired and walk away inspired with nothing to do. But last week we walked away inspired and we had some homework. And it's great if you're here tonight, even though you didn't do the homework, that's fine too. But I think it's just kind of a good analogy that this creation care work takes some work. So welcome to everybody. Welcome to new folks. And I'm just going to let Scott take it over from here. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. Well, let me just check in and make sure. I'll kind of check in with all your wonderful faces here. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, all good? All right, awesome. Well, for those that were here last week, thank you for coming back. That's a good sign. And for those that weren't able to make it last week, can I just do a quick check-in with you? How many folks were not able to make it next week? Can you just kind of hold up your hand just so I can kind of look? I've got you on Brady Bunch view. So about a handful of you. That's great, good. Well, welcome. I don't know if you guys have had a chance yet to check out some of the materials that I had recommended you take a look at before we got into tonight's session. If you haven't, no big deal. Not a big deal at all, and you'll quickly figure out why. Because what makes these sessions really awesome is the interaction that you're going to have as a group. And I'm glad to hear Marjorie say she likes homework. That's awesome, because I'm going to give you another homework assignment tonight. Even you're going to go a little bit further than we went last time. And for the handful of you that were not here last time, I'll try to build a bridge between last week and this week, just so you kind of know a little bit about what we covered last week. And if you haven't had a chance to see the Project Drawdown overview video, or you haven't had a chance to see the 4 levels of action, I'll at least try to give you enough tonight as we go through this, so that at least you have some common language as we go through all of these things. Some Zoom protocol things for you guys. One, I hope, after last week, I hope everyone's kind of gotten familiar with the whole Zoom group chat. I have kind of found through doing several of these that some people are able to get things through chat. Some people are able to get things through websites or other forums. And so I have 2 things that I want to share up front. The first is I'm just going to go ahead and hand out digitally the homework that's going to be for next week. And so I'm just going to kind of drag that into the chat window and then hope that most of you can see that. And if you haven't found the chat yet, there should be a button down on the bottom of your screen that has chat. It should bring it up, and you should see a PDF or an Adobe Acrobat file that is the solutions research homework for next week. If you can't see that, we've also created what I would call jargon-wise a landing page, a little mini website for St. Mark's. And I've just put the address for that up in the chat as well. We'll send this stuff out in email too. That's the third way. But I know some people like to, kind of follow along or kind of get a sense for these things as we go through them. And I wanted to give you the homework up front, because when we get near the end, I'm going to have you start to brainstorm some ideas about the different levels of action. So we'll revisit that. So that was kind of, a little bit of Zoom 101 that we did last time. Go into chat, see if you could download things, see if you could check out your site. And now we're going to kind of get into the main part of the presentation. So I'm going to share my screen now. And I am going to, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to show you your site if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it yet. So we'll share. Oh, shared the wrong screen. Let's try that again. There we go. Okay, so what you should see on your screen now is your website. And on your website is a nice pretty picture here, but you've also got like all of the materials from last week, including links to all the videos, to the presentation, etc. And then for tonight, all of that's up here as well. So that website that I put in the chat, basically everything that you could possibly need or want as kind of a jumping off point is right here on your site. And so I just kind of wanted to give you a general sense of what's up there if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it yet. So again, no big deal. And hopefully now you guys can see the planet in all of its glory. Is everyone able to see the planet? Does that look about right? Yeah, all right. So, and if anyone, has a question or something that comes up, feel free to put it in the chat. And as we're doing breakouts and stuff like that, we'll try to get to those issues. It's kind of difficult as a presenter to both interact with the chat and do the presentation, so I apologize. So between Christy and I, we'll figure it out if you have a question or if something's up that you need to bring up. So to begin this, if you weren't here last week, I talked about a gentleman named Paul Hawken. And Paul Hawken's an incredible person. He's been an entrepreneur, an activist, someone just an engaged citizen for the last, 40 plus years on behalf of this wonderful planet. And he has this incredible quote that I wanted to share with you guys that I thought really kind of set up what tonight's about really well. And I'm just going to read that quote to you sort of verbatim as we look at the planet. And the quote goes like this: addressing global warming is a way of seeing the world, a way of being in the world. The world that created the climate crisis is based on an underlying perception that we are all individuals who are separate from each other and from the natural world. It's a perception that leads to individualism, to competition, to greed, domination, and exploitation. But global warming and climate change and COVID and the coronavirus are awakening us to a different perception. We and all people and all creatures are all part of an interconnected whole. We all share one earth and one future, and we're all interdependent with each other. This is why the Pachamama Alliance's vision, which I'll explain in just a second, is to create an environmentally sustainable, socially just, and spiritually fulfilling human presence on the planet. This is a vision of a world that works for everyone. Even though we'll be focusing on specific climate solutions, we'll also need to cultivate and spread the emerging awareness of one interconnected Earth. So that's kind of the big, the big picture, because I like to have fun in these presentations. Here's a different way to look at it. Which is, hey, we're all in the same boat together, even though sometimes it may not always feel like we're in the same boat. But it is kind of ridiculous if you think about this picture for just a second, to kind of pretend like, hey, maybe those guys things aren't going so well when, everything at the top end of our boat seems to be just fine, when in fact, we're all literally in the same boat. Now, for those that were here last week, I did do a very specific definition of drawdown. And for those that weren't here, I'm going to go through that again, so we're on the kind of the same page about what drawdown is. In the original book, the definition of drawdown was this future point in time where levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere stop climbing and start to steadily decline. And it said on a year-on-year basis, right? And they've kind of modified that a little bit with the update that came out a few weeks ago, near the end of February, beginning of March, which is in the materials that I've given you. And they've kind of expounded on this just a little bit further, which is, this is the point where we begin the process of stopping further climate change and averting potentially catastrophic warming. And the last part of this definition, which I really like, which is, it's a critical turning point for life on Earth. Prior to Drawdown being published and this, what I would say is a big audacious goal, or at least how I talked about it last week, there wasn't really one that said, hey, how can we reverse this? And what would it take to actually reverse this? And do we know? Do we have the solutions in hand, or do we need to invent something? And good news, we know, and good news, we have a lot of those solutions in hand. As they say, now is better than new, because what's been modeled and mapped and measured, the 76 solutions that are in the update, we just need to get on them and we need to scale them. And that's when we need more and more groups like what we're doing tonight. So that's the definition. I came here via a couple of avenues that I talked about last week, but I'll just kind of briefly touch on this week again to try to make sure you understand my background. I went through a big point of reflection where I kind of realized I was part of the problem and I wanted to be part of the solution. And as I started to do my journey, I talked a bit last week about my faith-based journey as a member of Joe's parish up here in Capitol Hill, which is where I'm at right now and where our girls went to school. And then continued that exploration through an event a lot like this, where I had been invited over by a fellow parishioner and someone, and they said, hey, we know that you care a lot about helping the planet. Let me introduce you to Pachamama Alliance, and let me introduce you to Project Drawdown. And Drawdown is a book, Drawdown is a website, and Drawdown is an ongoing living organization to study what it would take to actually reverse global warming. And that's the left side of this slide. And Paul Hawken is the co-founder. The executive director now, he was the original executive director. The executive director now is a gentleman named Jonathan Foley. And if you look in the materials that I pointed you guys to on your website, Jonathan Foley, client scientist, incredible communicator. He's got a blog. I sent several folks his jump off point for individual actions. He has, just some incredible material. He is very positive. He's very solutions focused. And he's a climate scientist, so he knows what he's talking about. And his particular focus, just so you know, which I find refreshing, is very much on the food side of the equation. This is Paul Hawken, who was the original founder. And then on the right side, which is Pachamama Alliance, is the group that really kind of took these studies and then started to create, a facilitated sessions like what we're having tonight, where we start to put this into action as a community. So you've got science and community coming together, which is really what is the basis for what we're doing tonight. And Paul's got this great video that I wanted to share with you guys tonight, talking about being in action together. And this is my next Zoom trick, which is I'm going to launch a video, and hopefully it'll pop up here, and we'll just start playing. It's about 1.5 minutes long, so I'll check in with you guys as soon as the video's done. So I'm going to launch it now.
Well, what Pachamama does, from my point of view, Drawdown and so forth, is basically create the means whereby people can actually do something in the world. And you do it by community, you do it by a we instead of an I. And that's really, we talk about it in the book, and when you use the you singular, about climate, it makes people feel really inadequate. Like, even if they did all the you things you should do, like they know, that it is not adequate to the task at hand. But when people get together and work together, share both knowledge and resources and so forth, it's a very, very different sense about it. And then it makes a specific action part of a larger whole, as opposed to being on by myself doing this, and I hope it helps, but I'm just one person, and it doesn't really amount to anything, but it makes me feel a little bit better, but I still feel really bad about what's happening overall. That doesn't happen once you get into a group, whether the group is located in a small area, a community, a city, it doesn't matter. We are not individuals. We're just taught that. But that's not our identity.
So I thought that was a perfect video to sort of set up what tonight's about, because tonight's really about community and us getting together as a group. And I thought he eloquently outlined that. One of the other things, and Marjorie, this is going to be new for you, so I'll just give you a heads up. One of the other things that I thought I'd do tonight is kind of because you may or may not know this, but when we originally intended to get together and talk about Drawdown, it wasn't really intended to be the way that it's playing. We certainly weren't intended, we were planning on being on Zoom and doing it this way. So we had originally thought we'd do like a brief introduction to Project Drawdown that was just me kind of talking about it a little bit, and then inviting people in and do a facilitated session. And we kind of tweaked that a little bit based on this 5-part Getting into Action workshop series. And so what I thought I'd do is explain that to you guys, like, hey, what is that 5-part action workshop series, and what are we doing here? Like, what are we, and how would that typically play out over time? So I thought I'd just spend a couple minutes just explaining that. And really what tonight is part 2 of what would have probably been a 5-part series. And maybe there's more that we end up doing as a group or whatever, but I would say that these 2 sessions are like perfect jump off points for you to continue the conversation. So let me just kind of walk you through this a little bit. So typically, the way that this is designed is you do the intro, and that's 90 minutes to a couple of hours, And you just get people introduced to a couple of different things. You summarize what the drawdown solutions are, and you summarize this framework of getting into action. And you just, okay, we've got kind of a basic idea. And then what we did in January, I'm just using the most recent one of these. What we did in January is we got together and we started to share the solutions research. And that's this session. So you guys hopefully have done some research and started to learn some things about solutions that you're excited about. And you're starting to really kind of deepen your knowledge about solutions that are operating in the world. And then you are really kind of deepening that kind of like thought around these 4 levels of action, which I'll describe a little bit more here in a minute if you're not familiar with them yet. Where you're getting further in and you're like, okay, now I can really kind of think about my actions, not as an individual action or as a systems and structure, like who do I need to vote in or out of office, but like this whole portfolio of actions, right? So you have like a really clear sense of the agency that you can take as a group. And so what's going to happen from here is you're gonna share your solutions with each other tonight. There's going to be a lot of great energy. I'm going to shut up for most of the time, if you can believe it, and you're gonna share with each other a lot of what you've learned. And then what I'm going to do is hopefully we're going to work together to help you go even further with a solution and really kind of get deeper into that. And then if we were going to continue this and do the 5 weeks, then you just kind of go deeper and deeper into it, where you learn what's happening locally, you learn how to effectively communicate what you're learning, whether it's one-on-one scenarios or in these kinds of things, and you're basically just learning how to talk about this. This is a really difficult topic, and sometimes we don't even know where to start with these things. And so we try to like just progress the depth of this and just continue further. And what's exciting to me as you kind of continue and you develop this plan and you're getting together as a group is a whole bunch of individuals come together. And you guys are unique because I think a lot of you know each other and you have a lot of trust and you've been getting together for a while. But a lot of people get together as individuals and they leave as a really, really tight group, committed to a set of solutions and to a common cause. And that's pretty powerful. And so we leave after about 4 weeks of this and we give about a month break. And then we have people come back for a potluck dinner, which I don't know how you would do on Zoom. I guess everyone would just eat while we're on Zoom. But you come back for a potluck dinner and then share, hey, what have we learned over the last month? And see, what the next steps are, and then try to keep a heartbeat of activity going. And so really tonight, if you will, is really the second part of the first two pieces of that. So I thought I'd just put that in context for you guys, just to kind of give a sense of what did this come from? And it came from a more in-depth workshop series. And these nights are typically 2.5 hours long. So I'm going to try to do in 90 minutes what we would do in 2.5 hours. So we'll see how that goes. I bet it's going to go pretty well because we're going to let you guys do most of the talking. All right. So tonight, let me just go through the goals. So first, I want to make sure we are all connect as a group, share with a common purpose and common cause. I did cover a little bit about the structure and expectations. Hopefully you guys, especially as you're talking to each other about what you've learned, you're going to deepen your understanding of drawdown solutions. That inevitably is going to happen just through conversations. For those that have started to do that research, we're going to share what that experience was like. What did you learn? What patterns did you see? What was challenging? What was fun? We're going to get into the 4 levels of action a little bit more near the end of this tonight, and we're going to do a little bit of a brainstorm before we're done. And then hopefully what I'll inspire you guys to do is like really focus in one solution area and go deep with it. Doesn't mean that that's the thing you have to commit to for all of time. It's really just to feel like what would a portfolio of action look like across all those 4 levels. And wherever you're at right now on your journey is fine. You don't have to have all the answers instantaneously. And Christy and I were talking about this a little bit before we started. The number one piece of advice I give through this whole thing is be kind, be kind, be kind to yourself. Because people are oftentimes hard on themselves about not having done the homework or not gotten as far as they wanted or not. This is a journey. It's a journey for life. So hopefully the be kind message resonates and that lands well. So at this point, hopefully we've kind of set the stage and you feel welcome. I thought this laughing seal was like the perfect tone for the welcome that I was hoping would set. We're going to do our first breakout. And let me set this up. And this will give Christy an opportunity to start to get ready. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to break into groups of 3. And all you're going to do, this is going to be really hard, okay? All you're going to do is talk about what the experience of researching the solutions was like for those that had a chance to do it, okay? And if you didn't have, if there's 3 people in your group and none of you, were able to find a solution or were able to research a solution, maybe just talk about, some things that you're doing in your life right now that are trying to help the cause. But hopefully there's at least one person in there and then you could talk about the experience. So we're gonna give you 5 minutes in groups of 3, and Christy's gonna break us out into those groups of 3, and we'll give you a 1 minute heads up, and then we'll come back together as a group and we'll kind of share like what that was like. So again, all you're doing is talking about what was the experience like. Was it hard? Was it easy? Was there any particular thing that excited you or frustrated you? What did you realize in the process of doing the assignment, right? Those kinds of questions are what I'm hoping you guys will discuss. So Christy, you good? You ready to do the breakout?
Yep, and here we go.
Welcome back, everybody, and well done to the breakouts and back, like a space trip every time. It's a miracle. All right, I'm gonna share my slides again, and hang in there. Okay, so hopefully you got 2 kids on your screen that are clearly not paying attention to social distancing.
No.
Well, it was a simpler time. So I thought, one of the things that's always fun, hopefully that was, I'll check in on your faces here. Hopefully there was good energy there, just explaining the experience to each other. Was it good? Was it fun? Yeah. So, and again, amnesty here, like if you didn't get to it, no big deal. But anything come up, like it would be interesting to hear if there were like common, like, yeah, that was hard and I don't really understand this, or like, were there any common things like that that anyone would like to share before we kind of go into the heart of this?
I don't think we can. In our group, it was, I think, just about almost everybody expressed a need to spend time just learning the tool before we could dive deeply into research.
And when you say tool, do you mean Drawdown itself, like the website? Like, what is this thing? Just familiarizing yourself? Is that what you mean? Or do you mean like Zoom and how this crazy thing works?
No, it was the website. And
okay.
Yeah, and we were limited with our time to devote to it.
Okay, great. Anyone else?
Well, I loved the fact that Libby said she didn't get to the homework, but she spent all week thinking about Drawdown and shared it with 3 or 4 other friends.
Awesome.
So I think she did better than the homework.
Yeah. So please, back to my be kind. Please don't lose that message, right? Like the homework's there just to kind of, it's just a tool, just intended to kind of, help create progress. And then, you create these forums so that you could share, there's some accountability, if you will, but hopefully it's light accountability. It's not meant to be heavy accountability. It's meant to be supportive. And so, yeah, that's common, just so you know, right? As I mentioned last week, so if you watch the 11-minute overview video, it's a lot to take in. I've been reading the Drawdown book for the better part of the last 2.5 years, and of course the updated material that came out, a couple months ago. There's a lot there. I mean, you could devote your whole life to, just a solution, right? And so please know that, of course, right, like in your time at your own pace. Okay, well, with that, because I really want to protect the next part of this, which is really going to be a discussion with each of you guys. So for those that were, and I'll try to break this into the people that were able to get to the homework and the people that weren't able to get to the homework. This is really the opportunity, if you had the opportunity to kind of do a deep dive on a solution or two and kind of go through the worksheet where you get the opportunity to share what you learned. And so the way that this is structured is this is meant to be in groups of 5, and I can't tell just based on my view right now, like how many people we have right now. I think groups of 5 is going to work great, but let me just kind of check. Yeah, I think it's going to work work excellent, actually. So there might be 4 in your group, or there might be 3 in your group, and that's fine, no big deal, because you'll probably have plenty to chat about. But the way that this group, the way that this particular breakout works is this: you're going to break into groups of 5, and each person is going to take turns. You're going to take turns, and you're going to go through one solution. Now you may end up going through 2 because maybe you need to, and you're going to have 5 minutes to kind of walk through your worksheet on your solution. What was the solution? What did you learn about it? Each of the questions that was actually in the handout. If you don't have the handout handy and that's not in front of you, that's fine. Just share what you've learned. So you'll have 5 minutes to do that. And here's the important part, which is really challenging and so far has been very difficult. The rest of the people that are in the group with you are not meant to interact with you while you're talking. They're just supposed to listen and ideally take notes, or just really just be there and be present with what you're presenting. And then after 5 minutes, we're going to give 4 minutes to the group to respond to what you presented. Okay, so you're actually practicing a couple of things. One, you're practicing conveying what you've learned, and then at the same time, you're practicing listening and then asking questions. So if you haven't done anything yet, meaning solutions, and you haven't really had the opportunity to go into it in any kind of depth, no big deal. Just listen to the people that are kind of talking through it, and then ask questions and interact. And then what we'll do is, so again, each person has 9 minutes, 5 minutes to talk, 4 minutes for the group to respond. Then we're just going to rotate around the group. This should take about 45 minutes. And we're going to check in on you guys in your breakout groups. And like I said, this is really the heart of it, is where you guys get to share with each other and talk to each other, and where the community building really starts around these solutions. So does that all make sense? Does the prompt that we're about to do, where we break out into groups of 5 and each person just takes a turn, they talk for 5 minutes, respond for 4 minutes, then go to the next person? Does that make sense? All good? Okay. All right. So Christy, I'll have you set up the breakout rooms, and then you'll hear from us. We'll send messages, and we're going to try to jump into the rooms with you guys and just make sure everything's okay.
All right, so I'm creating the breakout rooms now, and I am sending everybody to those breakout rooms. Here we go.
All right. You made it. Well done.
I'd say you and Christy made it. We just sat here.
That's awesome. So just let me check in on faces here, and then we'll do some share outs. Can everyone see the slide that's up right now?
The bike?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it should be a bike that says share more, consume less, which I thought was kind of cheeky. I thought it was funny. So I thought maybe we do a quick check-in with each group. I know we have 12 minutes left, but maybe we go group by group. We'll just go in numerical order. Anyone from group 1 want to share, what stood out from your conversation for the last 45 minutes? What'd you learn?
We may not know our group numbers.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know.
Okay.
Does everyone know their group number?
That's a fair point. I guess I don't know why I assumed everyone would know their group numbers.
Okay, so what I'll do is list the first person I see in the breakout room for each one of the groups. So Edie Weller, it's Edie Weller's group.
Does that help?
I'll start. It was interesting that we focused a lot on food waste. We focused on solutions primarily from the agriculture and food, agricultural, and land use sector, and we were really interested in the integration across those possible responses. So we're talking about forest production and reducing food waste, plant-based diet, and really the synergy across those potential solutions.
Awesome. Awesome. If it's okay, we'll go over to group 2. We're just doing a quick check-in. Doesn't need to be exhaustive. You guys have been talking for 45 minutes.
All right, so group 2. So Kathy Sodergren, that is your group.
Well, I think we were sort of the cynics. None of us had done a whole lot of homework. but we really didn't come up with a lot. We have great plans for what we're going to do next.
Well, and I assume when I was in there, you guys were talking about Facebook's commitment to going carbon neutral, right?
Yes.
Yes. So, I mean, to me, that's not cynical. That's pretty optimistic. That's pretty solutions focused. That was pretty cool. I mean, I only got like a snippet of it. I don't know how far.
Well, yeah, but that's what they are doing.
Absolutely.
What are we doing?
Right.
Is a whole other thing.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, how about group 3? We'll check in with you guys.
All right, so group 3, that's Lisa's group.
We had a pretty lively discussion, and I think if there were some overarching themes, we talked about sort of telecommuting and sort of telework, and we talked about food and plant forward sort of eating, and we talked about tree planting and girls' education. And through all of them, we were asking, I think, a couple of questions. One was, how do you scale? How do you go from like, oh, this is what I do or my family does? How do we actually turn it into something that can be engaged in by a community, like whether it's the St. Mark's community or the community where we live and work, and how that could work, that level 3 challenge. And then the second thing we talked about a lot was equity. So like, who gets to telework and who doesn't get to telework, and who does telework from their phone versus who does telework from their nice laptop in their high internet access private study that's quiet because someone else is taking care of their children. I mean, it's like, so it was lively.
That's awesome. All right, we'll bop over to the next group.
All right, Clara, so this is your group.
I guess does that mean I'm reporting?
That's picking us up.
I mean, well, Andrew started us, and he's particularly knowledgeable about the building industry, and his insights ended up segueing both into some of the others that we discussed, which was land use and bamboo specifically. But I feel like I would like Andrew to summarize some of his comments about building, because I think that was really interesting.
Awesome.
Does Andy know he's on the hook?
Sorry, I was muted. Well, one of the things that we talked about actually segued really nicely into something that Clara said about fashion. So I was talking about new kinds of building materials. Lots of extant building materials that are used in buildings everywhere actually create a lot of carbon emissions when you manufacture them, like cement and concrete, for example. But one example of a new kind of building material is growing bamboo that can be then combined into massive beams that can be used to build skyscrapers. And bamboo grows about 20 times as fast as a typical tree. And so if you can grow a lot of bamboo and replace cement and concrete and steel and even wood with bamboo, you can potentially sequester carbon in buildings for very long periods of time, preventing them from being released into the atmosphere. So that's when I'm going to hand off this conversation to Clara, who talked about how bamboo can be used in fashion to do something kind of similar.
Well, hopefully we're not using too much of our time, but I wanted to research bamboo because I am in my work history have a lot of interesting in clothing history and fashion, and so I've read a lot about the contemporary waste in the clothing industry, and bamboo can be made into a fabric. And so I did not know it could be used for building materials other than just sort of replacement for wood, but that it also, bamboo fabric is one of many sustainable fabrics that designers are working with. And and I have a lot of interest in sort of fashion supply chain stuff and how to make clothing more sustainable.
Awesome. And no, you didn't use up because we're making this up. So how about the last group? We'll check in with you guys.
All right. So Ruth and Carolyn, that is your group.
Well, I am not hearing Carolyn. So, so I would say that 3 out of the 4 of us really are thinking a lot about food. Actually, I am too, but it wasn't one of the ones I presented. But that food and agriculture, and also how it pertains to our own lives, it seems so obvious as one of the obvious things that we can do, as opposed to some of us don't have room to grow bamboo, for instance. But I mean, I know the purpose here was to think about exciting potentials in the world. But I think everybody has energy for the idea of thinking of in terms of agriculture and eating less meat, for instance. And Carolyn or Norman or Rachel, please add something.
I feel like we had kind of a wide-ranging kind of discussion, you know, everything from some geoengineering concepts to green roofs to carbon footprint measures.
To electric vehicles.
Electric vehicles, energy star appliances, and sequestering carbon in the using seaweed, kelp, and other seaweeds in the oceans. So we kind of I think we ended up finding, I didn't jot down any examples, but ways that all those things were interconnected also, or a lot of them were. So
Awesome. Wow. Well, so first of all, thank you for sharing all of that. You know, it's exciting to just hear the kinds of discussions that are going on in there as you guys are on your journeys. Remember to be kind, be kind, be kind. Right. This is a journey for life. So you know, there's a lot. What's exciting about it is there are so many solutions, but also, you know, sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming too, but that's okay, right? Just take a deep breath and kind of keep at it. So you're probably also getting a pretty good feel, as there's 2 minutes left in our time together here, how what was designed to be a 2.5-hour session, trying to fit it into 90 minutes, how challenging that is. What I'm going to do in the remaining time, if you guys will indulge me, is I'm just going to kind of give you a sense of what is in the rest of this, and what we were intended to do. And then I'll hopefully what I'll do is I'll set up your homework assignment from here, so that you can kind of go delve in a little bit further. So assuming that you guys can see the slides okay, I'll just talk you through the rest of this. So I do repeat what we went through in the presentation, the 4 levels of action, and talking through the individual action, what you can do with your friends and family, what you can do at that level 3 that Lisa talked about, which is really what the design point of this is about, and what this community has done with the commitment that you've made as a congregation, which I found so inspiring from our conversation last week, and the vision that you have around that was so very vibrantly articulated. And then of course that then influences you know, policy and laws and the systems and structures that govern society, and that's the strategy, right? Which is, you know, really create that middle out movement, as we talk about. And my intention was, if we had the time, I was going to show you the 7-minute video, but we're not going to do that. It is up on your website. You can go watch that at your own leisure. It is a fantastic video if you haven't had a chance to see it. It's a great way to think about, again, how to create your portfolio of action. And I would just tell you, from having done this with hundreds of people, there's always this aha that goes off about, oh, actually there is other kinds of action that I can do, and there's other ways that I can be in community and actually participate in this and take direct agency and ownership over actually being a part of the solution. And so after that, then the intention was to then kind of get into the next level of the action plan. And my homework assignment to you guys is to take the handout that I put in the chat window earlier. It's up on your website as well. And maybe the right thing to do is just show it to you. Andy was doing this in the breakout room, and a confession time. I gave you PDFs and I gave you Word documents, and the whole point, but I forgot to tell you, the whole point of giving you a Word document was so that you could come in the Word document and share it with each other, and then type in here, and then share what you typed, right? I mean, that was like, oh, a Word document was so you can share it with each other on Zoom. So I just feel like a dum-dum for not sharing that correctly. So Andy, thanks for having that up when I came into your breakout, because I was like, oh yeah, there's a reason I gave you the Word document.
My objective is to embarrass you, Scott.
Yeah, mission accomplished. Well done. So anyway, I thought you guys would find that amusing. So that document has basically, really, it's the same document as last week in the solution side of things, where it walks you through questions and like had you really kind of think about a solution. One thing I should say is the Drawdown website's changed a little bit, where they give an overview and then a technical deep dive on each of the solutions. If you've just skimmed the site and you haven't had a chance to like really get into it yet, you may have missed that technical deep dive, and that's where they kind of even go further into each particular solution. Also, in the supplemental materials that I gave you, I've given you some jump off points. One of the absolute best jump off points is Dr. Jonathan Foley, who's the executive director. He has a blog up on Medium. He's global eco guy, but it's in your materials, so you know it's all there, so easy to jump off. And Catherine Hayhoe, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff I put in there too. But like, just if you're looking for ideas and sparks and that kind of stuff, I've put them in the materials. So just know that there's several jump off points when you're ready to kind of go dive in a little bit further. And then the last thing that I had for you guys, which again, I'm not going to do because we're now over time. Catherine Wilkinson has this great 3-minute section of her TED Talk. And her TED Talk's really about empowering women and how important it is to the future of humanity to empower women through education and through the work that Project Drawdown advocates, not just for climate change, but for the general good of the planet. And so the last part of it, I know it's crazy concept, right? Yeah, women, believe women. So it's a great talk. I've enjoyed watching it with my daughters several times. But there's a 3-minute section at the end where she really talks about us, this group. Our number one thing that we can do is talk about it, and really be messengers, and wherever you're at, and just engage people in that conversation. And hopefully not in a point of like despair, because there's a lot of scary stuff out there, right? But really at a point of hope and a possibility, because people will engage with that. People will engage with solutions. When it feels a little overwhelming and it feels like, oh my gosh, how are we going to actually address that? People start to shut down. And I hope all of you will enlist in the into the mission of being possibilitists, if that's a word, take that forward and help create some of these feelings of what it's like when you get together and you start talking about solutions. So that was what the rest of the night was intended to be. I knew that it would be challenging to get into 90 minutes. Hopefully there's enough there for you guys to continue to work with. And I'll talk to Marjorie about, hey, is there room for us to maybe look at, something that's maybe that 5-week course that I talked about. Maybe there's something there as a community we could do together. But that kind of concludes what I had hoped to go through with you, at least for the 2 nights that we had set aside for this. So hopefully that got you at least inspired. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's nice to meet all of you guys.
Thank you, Scott.
And Marjorie, I don't know if you wanted to close out or close it out. I don't know the bookends of this, like, or I will just say.
Scott, this is Christy. I'm going to say thank you to you for inspiring us and for helping us to know that that we have agency in the middle of this, and to really encourage us to know that and to go and do. So thank you. And thank you to the Creation Care team for all of your work to make this happen, and for all that will be too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it was excellent. Excellent. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks guys. And I learned at least 300 things the last 2 weeks. So. See ya.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye. Thank you.
Beautiful job, everybody.